Chapter 4 is all about relating percents, fractions, and decimals, because percents and fractions and decimals are all just different ways of representing the same thing, which is parts of a number, right? Portions of a number. So in 4.1, we're going to look at percents and fractions and how we can relate those two. So these first questions we have are asking for us to write these percents as a fraction. So 35%. The important thing to understand here is that percent means per 100 or out of 100. So if we have 35%, that means 35 out of 100 or 35 hundredths. So we can see that this fraction is 35 hundredths, and we could also simplify this one. So 35 and 100 have a common factor of 5 here. So if we divide them both by 5, we get 7/20. So 35% as a fraction is equal to 7/20. Okay, now another one, we have 120%. So as just a quick reminder for us, 100% would be one whole, right? That would be one, the number 1. So for example, if I said 100% of my students are at school today, all of my students are here, right? So 120% means more than one whole, means more than the whole thing. So we can keep that in mind. So now if we want to write the percent 120% as a fraction, again, our denominator for percent is always 100. So we have 120 hundredths. And we could divide both of these. First, you could divide them both by 10, and you would get 12/10. You could divide those both by 2 and get 6/5. And you could then write this as the mixed number, 1 and 1/5. So 120% is equal to 1 and 1/5. Okay, now we can also go the other direction with this. We can do fractions written as a percent. So sometimes it'll be super easy. Sometimes it's a matter of finding an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. So for example, if I'm looking at 3/50, it's really easy for me to find an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 100 because 50 times 2 equals 100. So then 3 times 2 equals 6. And again, percent means out of 100. So this numerator here, out of 100, would represent my percent. So 3/50 is equal to 6%. Let's try another one there. This time we have 9 thousandths. Again, this is one that could easily be converted to an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100 because I know 1,000 divided by 10 equals 100. So then we do 9 divided by 10, which would give us a decimal here, 0.9. So our percent, 9 1,000ths, would be written as 0.9%. All right, now let's take a look at a word problem that's got a slightly trickier fraction to it. So this question says, a drought affects 9 out of 12 Midwestern states. What percent of the Midwestern states are affected by the drought? So again, we know our fraction here is 9 out of 12, or 9/12. Now this time, there's not a number that I can easily multiply here to equal 100. So rather than doing that, I'm going to solve this a slightly different way, and something that we'll get a little more practice with later. But actually, it's pretty easy to do this. So we know that a fraction is also just a way of representing division. So if we were to take 9/12 and divide 9 divided by 12, then we've got this problem here. So 12 goes into 9 0 times. 12 goes into 90 7 times. And 12 goes into 60 5 times. So we would get 0.75. Now that's our decimal, right? This is a decimal equivalent for 9/12. Now the relationship between a decimal and a percent, remember that a decimal is just out of a whole number, right? 0.75 means 75 hundredths, okay? We could even write it like this, at which point we know that this would be our percent, 75%. Okay, another thing that we can do in order to go from a decimal to a percent, super easy, because a percent is always going to be 100 times greater than a decimal. So if we just move this decimal twice, we would get our percent, 75%. So that's just a quick look for us at relating percents and fractions.